So that's a little bit my weakness. My favorite thing in music is improvising, because you don't know how it ends. And what I don't like in playing written music is that I know how it ends. And because of that, when I organize a program of a recital like a bouquet of flowers, I try to think about tonalities, thematic connections, and so it becomes a bit of a construction of the mind, like I did the 2 C minor sonatas as bookshelf endings. And that obliges me then to go through, in the performance, into a path of connecting things that are not connected in dots. For instance, the D minor slow movement of the Italian concerto and the D minor theme of the variations by Mendelssohn, to me, is a continuation by Mendelssohn of the Bach style. And so, in that sense, I think, honestly, I should have breathed between the pieces. The idea to dive from one to the other is frustrating for the listener, because by the time you start the next piece, you're already in it. Whenever when you have a moment, you go, it's like when you speak or you speak or you sing when you exhale. So you inhale, like the conductor gives the upbeat, and you play on the downbeat. So if I had taken more time, I would have started on the downbeat of the next piece. But I think it was a race between my psyche and my construction of the program. In retrospect, I think I was trying to be too didactical, especially about the slow movement borrowing of Beethoven in Mozart. Or that he practiced it. And he thought, hey, that's neat. Do you know what I mean, or am I elliptic? So that was another of the reasons I put these 2 sonatas in the program, because I thought they'll mirror each other. So these are the bad reasons for which I didn't read between the pieces. Yes? I teach. And I find that teaching is the best warm-up. In fact, I find it very easy to discover more about how to practice the piece when I teach it than when I teach it to myself when I practice. Actually, I'm very upset with myself because very often I don't apply the things I suggest to the students to do. Because it's easier to say to the others. But it is true that everybody has a different routine for warming up. What do you do?
I play scales, thirds, tenths, sixths.
But you don't play the piece.
No.
You only play scales. You don't play the piece to warm up to play the piece.
What?
When I arrived earlier this morning, you were playing the piece,
Yeah.
not the scale.
Well, when I have time, I play the scale. When I don't have time, I just play the piece.
Oh, I see. That's the. I understand. Does it help you to play scales?
Well, yeah, and sometimes like arpeggio, short arpeggios, long arpeggio, and then octaves, combined scales. I have like a full list.
I The warming up in terms of the technique is the ratio of energy versus production of sound. And I find it to be something that young people are the most fighting, is how to obtain what they dream to hear through their fingers. And sometimes we put too much effort or not enough effort. I find it very important to find the right amount of depressing speed of the keys with precision and the weight without too much. Because as soon as we see dynamic marking, it says 3F like in your piece, or your famous tremolo, then all of a sudden we don't manage it physically anymore. It's just more like I have to do something. And mostly I think it's because the piano is the only instrument that doesn't come in sizes when you learn it. Well, it's true, which means that when you grow, it's narrower. When you're smaller, it's wider. I see the keys. I find them a bit shrunk lately from my tastes. I still think that this ratio story is very important because there's nothing more difficult than to start a concert or a performance. Once you're in the piece, it's okay, but to get into it, to find the right energy for it, depending on what it demands, is very difficult. And that only experience teaches you. Also, it's because where we are placed as pianists is the wrong spot. The keyboard should be here, like organists. And you hear the sound, which you hear as listeners. We hear it from the tail in the back with this fan that blocks the sound. And so and very often we don't hear the real sound that we project because we think it's not enough. And we force the sound because we don't hear that it's not necessary. In other words, we don't always have the connection to the projection of the sound with the energy that we use to produce it. In that sense, when you're well warmed up, usually it's easier to start a piece than when you're cold. Which is why I hate concerti. Especially the classical concerti where you warm up and then you sit on stage for 15 minutes to hear a symphony. And sometimes I play on my legs, I try to keep my fingers moving because, I have to play by the time it's my turn. But thankfully modern composers start the concerti right away. So it's less difficult. Any other question?
How do you go about making an interpretation? Like in the live yesterday, you had some inner voices.
So this is exactly live. You plan and somehow it happens. Today I'm going to do this and this and that, and this and that and that way. I'll do this, I'll manage time for this because I have to organize this. And somehow you're in the evening and you go, I didn't have time to do any of what I planned. So I think that interpretation is something that you organize your plan, how you want to go through the narration of the storytelling. But it doesn't depend so much on you, in fact. It depends on the state in which you are when you play it. Where you place the piece in the program. If it comes after something dramatic, it's lighter. If it comes at the beginning, it's dramatic. I mean, you could very well start the piece and say, oh, it's a daydream opening. Or you want to make it a statement. the theme in the listener's hearing instead of just starting. As if you remember a good theme from your childhood. Oh, that's what it was? And then, and you start organizing the entrances of the voices according to how you want to organize the storytelling of the opening. A distant reminiscence that becomes, that blossoms in front of the audience. Okay, you plan that, and all of a sudden you start and the first note doesn't speak. And then you have to make do with the unexpected, and all of a sudden you find yourself, I didn't plan that, but now it's too late, I have to make sense of it. And then somebody comes and tells you, I like that beginning, I heard all the notes. So in fact, I don't want to mention that everything escapes us, but mainly it does. In other words, we plan certain things. Now, of course, when you hear some people play, you have the impression that what they produce is what they wanted, and there is no doubt. Like Yuja and all these people, they just arrive and I think it's also because they multiply the performances. Martha Argerich has played in her life, I don't even know if she can count how many times Prokofiev 3 or Ravel G, to give an example. And inevitably in the seasons of life, you hear the piece differently, even if you already master all its elements, you know what you want and how you want to play. So I don't think that they question their interpretation, but probably it evolves with themselves. And so if you play from time to time a piece, or when you're young, it's the first time you play the piece, then it's a first experience with how you present the piece. But if you presented it to 1,000 audiences, little by little you start getting some patterns that you organize your thoughts through and that you stay on course. In other words, I think that the key to an interpretation that matches your intent is that you manage the touch control of the pianos you play, since unless you have a personal well, you play on anything that there is. You don't bring your own piano. So that's why people don't understand how nervous it makes pianists to play everything they want to play on an instrument they never played and they will never play. You don't do that in horse riding for sports. You don't do that in tennis with the rackets. You don't do that violinists with the bow or their instruments. You take a lifetime to get in unity with your instrument, becomes the extension of your musicianship. And with us, it's cab driver. It's different cabs. Every time, you know, like you take a rental and you go, oh, it doesn't respond the brakes or something. Oh. In other words, we always adjust with more or less happiness. Oh, this one is good. Like the Fazioli is very rewarding. But some pianos are less. But they need to be known and learned. So I guess interpretation depends also on the capacity of the touch control. That you can manage to play what you planned on instruments that don't respond the way you expect. Has it happened to you to play on a piano that doesn't sound like you wish?
Yeah, earlier today, the practice rooms.
But compared to home, you mean?
Yeah.
You didn't bring your piano? But they'll make them soon foldable. Or inflatable, something. Anything else?
Yesterday I was so amazed at how you were able to play the notes so softly and delicately, especially at the top. And often, I don't know, you're playing them quieter than I would ever think would be possible. And I'm wondering how much of that is use of the soft pedal, or I guess just learning how to practice well and knowing
children hate when I play soft because they hear my breathing louder than the music. They've mentioned to me that in recordings or in performances. Dad, I cannot stand hear you breathe. And of course, when you play whisper soft and your nose is stuffed, the problem. Okay, that was the first fun part of the answer. The second, the technical answer is that I play by touching the key before I depress the key. I depress the key very fast from inside the key, meaning not from above with the finger. And it's intuitive, it's counterintuitive, because normally when you do this, you don't do that. Or then you do this, right? And so we're used to play deep and fast to play loud. But if you play deep and fast to play soft from close-up, we're afraid it's going to be loud. So by intuition, we play softly by depressing slowly. And that's where the problems are, as I was telling you, some pianos are heavier on some keys than others. Yesterday I played Georgina, which is one of our best pianos in the school, for sad reasons, because it was a gift after an accident. But nevertheless, that choice of instrument was made by Menachem Pressler about 20 years ago in Germany, in Hamburg. And I find that the action of it allows for feather touch. It was not out on stage at the dress rehearsal, and physically I'm not fit enough to pull out this huge whale from the back. So there was the newer piano, the Webb, on the stage, on which I played my dress rehearsal. So in fact, my dress rehearsal I played on the piano that I didn't use. And the piano was only out at the concert, the Georgina. And so on the Webb, I was this, and on the Georgina, I was doing this. Only depends to which extent it's necessary to have sub-whisper mezzo pianissimo. Some people have mezzo for forte, sometimes for piano, but not viola. Nobody has mezzo fortissimo either. And so generally we graduate the intermediary dynamics, mezzo forte, forte, mezzo piano. But then it's fortissimo or triple fortissimo or triple pianissimo, but we don't have triple mezzo pianissimo. You know? It's because most of us play softly, slow down, and loudly fast down the keys. So if I play, for instance, under the escapement, even without the left foot, I can do this, but most pianists would do, because it has to be heard. So this introduction nobody cares about because everybody wants to hear it. So if you play, or you play, my children would say, you sound louder when you breathe on it because you cover it with your breath. And so what I do in the recordings now is that I open my mouth not to breathe by my nose when I play soft. Because my nostrils make too much noise. But it is true that when I was young and I was having to dress rehearse for a performance, there was always somebody in the hall saying, I don't hear enough in the bottom of the hall what you do in the pianissimo. Bring up a little bit the dynamic range. And so that bothered me because I felt like then I couldn't play louder because I would bang, And therefore, if I have to play louder what is soft, then my range of dynamic range is a little bit less large. And so I say, then I'm playing for the rich. Which was a provocative thing to say, because usually the old rich people purchase the first row. And their sonotone kisses with the microphone. And so we have always this problem that the music is intimate and not meant to be spread for an audience. In other words, the emotion of the piece is not made for the airport presentation. And so therefore the intimacy becomes artificially projecting. And then everything becomes less, I mean, you could play since it's anyway a lullaby, it's 117 number 1 by Brahms. Or then you have to do I want to be heard by everybody. And I've noticed with time, and it's not about being facetious, but that in the beginning, in the opening of the concert, if you play very soft, people are bothered because the slightest noise is disturbing. And so after a few minutes, if you maintain that attention of the soft notes, I think the attention of the listening heightens. So either you go to the audience, either the audience comes to you. But it is a difficult thing to choose because, for instance, in the Italian concerto, it's an aria. And of course, there is a melody in the accompaniment. And so when I was younger, I thought I have to bring everything. It's so beautiful. It's so meaningful. It's so, And then I realized that with age, you have to choose what you bring and what you don't bring. Not everything is within the frame of the painting. Some things are outside of it. So you have to choose what you do. And so I tend to overestimate the importance of the very soft in order to keep my idea of